Pakistan question, no doubt.
Thank you, Michael.
Sir.
Two-part question. You obviously don't like what happened and what is happening. What is the counterfactual? And specifically, in Pakistan, having gotten the Pakistan Army involved almost sort of 6 years too late in Fatah, what would you suggest be done now?
So I think Afghanistan is lost for the United States and its allies. I think we're watching NATO bleed to death in Kipling's term, on the Afghans' plains. But what are we going to do? There are 20-some million Pashtuns. Are we going to invade with the number of troops? We don't have enough troops there to have a constabulary that could control the country. The disaster occurred at the beginning. The fools who ran our government, who thought that a few hundred CIA officers and a few hundred special intelligence or special forces officers and soldiers could take a country the size of Texas and hold it, were quite literally fools. And now we're paying the price. Probably too late to do anything about it. Again, it's the cost of not knowing history. History can't tell you what to do, but it certainly can give you an idea of what not to do. What we're experiencing in Afghanistan now is exactly what the Soviets experienced, the British experienced, Alexander experienced it 4 centuries before Christ. I don't think there's any way out of it. I think the only thing they're hoping for is they kill bin Laden and then they can declare victory and go home. But there's not enough soldiers. If we took everybody from Iraq, it wouldn't solve the problem. So I think we're probably closer to defeat in Afghanistan than we are in Iraq at the moment. But I think just on your point, sending the I would have bet, and I don't get my pension for 6 years yet, but I would have bet my pension that Musharraf would never have done that. And just that alone, to me, is something that if I was in the U.S. government, I would be saying, what more can you ask of this government? Leave Musharraf aside. What more can you ask? But again, the question is always, what did he do for me yesterday?
Branson, Middle East Institute. We have, as you indicated, a very bad situation here, but somehow we have to find a way out. Now, let us assume in January we have a new president, and he or she appoints you as the director of Middle East in the National Security Council. What would your advice be to him or her?
I would first advise the president to find psychiatric help if I was the choice. I don't think it's hard at all. I think it's a matter of telling the American people the truth. There's no other way to start but to say, listen, we've been lying to you for the last 5 administrations. They don't care if you wear short dresses in Milwaukee. They don't care if you have beer after work, and they don't care if you vote 8 times a month in Iowa. They don't like what we're doing in their world. Now, if we want to keep what we're doing and what we have been doing going, then get ready for a very long, very bloody, very expensive war. If that's what you want, that's what we'll do. Or we might be able to find another way out of this. I don't think any specific thing you can do, you should do any specific thing first, but to tell the American people the truth. Because right now they're being led down a blind alley of endless war and expense. After that, I think the first thing on the agenda is energy. And you can see all of the shills have come out for both parties about let the market decide and innovation will take care of this and it's a fungible commodity. Well, we're paying for oil in the lives of Marines and soldiers. And it's not just in the Islamic world. When we get ready and have to fight a war in 27,000 square kilometers, a swamp in the Gulf of Guinea, then that's going to be a problem. So it seems to me energy is the place to start after you tell the American people the truth and find some way to shut up AEI's shills for the energy industry and Daniel Yergin and the rest of them. And listen to that character. There's a guy out there called Gal Luft, L-U-F-T, who has written some very interesting things about the shift from energy being just a economic issue to being a very, very important national security issue for America. If you look at it objectively, I think you could say when we next celebrate the 4th of July, we're a far less independent nation than we were 20 years ago, because we don't have the decision over peace and war when it comes to energy anymore. We go to war if somebody pulls our chain, whether it's the Eastern Province or the Niger Delta.
My name is Ron Zwart. I'm formerly with the Department of Defense. How do you explain the absence of another terrorist attack within the United States since 9/11?
The extraordinary cleverness and the ignorance of the media in allowing our politicians, clever politicians, to describe this war only in terms of the detonation of explosives. If war was only about exploding munitions, it wouldn't be hard to fight. America has been under attack every day since 9/11. We're mired in 2 wars we're losing. We're spending, how much? $12 billion a month in Iraq, some billion in Afghanistan. The domestic political cohesion of this country is probably more shaken than it has been since Vietnam. And look at the intentions of the enemy. The intentions of the enemy have been threefold, clearly stated over the past 10 years: bleed us to bankruptcy, spread out our forces, and destroy domestic political cohesion. I think if I am in a cave in Afghanistan and I'm Osama, I'm doing the happy dance. The one thing I would say is they have themselves in a box. One of the few places they left themselves no room for maneuver is on the escalation of attacks, the escalation of damaging attacks, the escalation of the damage of each attack. I'll get it right eventually. Every attack since '92 has been incrementally more powerful and more destructive. And so now they're in the place of having to attack us again with something more destructive than 9/11. And so we're waiting for that. The idea that somehow they can't do it is a figment of our imagination. We have wide open borders. We have wide open ports. We keep pumping visas into Saudi Arabia for students to come here. We haven't taken the time to control or finish controlling the Soviet nuclear arsenal. The one thing I would say is my own suspicion, and it's a speculation, that there is a discussion in Al-Qaeda's councils about whether or not they should attack now. I think success has come so fast to them since 9/11 that they may not want to attack now because they might rally the American people to the president and undo some of the progress they've made so far. But I think that the main reason we even talk about it is because the politicians have framed it, and the media has let them frame it only in terms of explosions.
Charles Murn, freelance writer. I'm wondering where, how you consider the portrayal of the Al-Qaeda movement and those associated with it as a revolutionary movement within Islam itself. I was living in India on September 11th and was struck by reports just days later of the usual kind of attacks, for example, in Pakistan, of Sunni on Shia and vice versa. How does that fit into your overall picture? I'm surprised you didn't talk about it a little bit more.
I think one thing that I tried to rectify it in this book, is I did not, in the first 2 books I wrote, give enough consideration to the sort of liberation or revolutionary fervor that is included in what bin Laden represents. Of all of the indictments, I tend to think that even worse than our support for Israel is our support for the fascist governments that govern most of the Middle East and the Arab world. I think there's a very strong liberation. Some of the Pakistani press, interestingly, has been very analytic on this point, saying of all people on earth, we never expected the Americans not to understand the dissatisfaction of people with oppressive governments. The Sunni versus Shia business, that's a battle that's going to be fought. Al-Qaeda is very clear that the third step in their process, get the Americans out of the Middle East, get rid of Israel and the governments, and then go after the heretics. I think that's going to come. I think it's going to come in Iraq. Our whole at least it appears to me, our whole position in Iraq is now dependent on Muqtada al-Sadr maintaining his ceasefire, which why shouldn't he? Since we're killing Sunnis, he'll have to kill less of them later. But I think, at least in the Sunni world, the current attendant to Al-Qaeda's ideology of liberation is more important than I thought it was, and something that we ought to factor in when we think about.
Thank you.